Well, let's call together the planning board meeting for Wednesday, April 16th. The first item on our agenda will be to approve the minutes from our April 2nd planning board meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to look over those meeting minutes? And everyone, no changes, no amendments, everything looks good. Thanks. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented. Charlie, so in second, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We are going to have a little change to our agenda this evening. Initially, the colleague.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, John is.
Oh, John is here. Okay, so then that's not allowed.
You don't need one.
We don't need an amendment. We're going to discuss Holly site plan. So John,
Okay, I thought it was second on the agenda.
nope. So hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. I think where we left off. We were all concerned about the driveway.
Yep.
Maybe a few other things. So what do you have for us? this afternoon?
Well, I guess that is the main concern. First is the driveway and the slopes, working with Emilio and how we resolve that. So we were able to flatten the slopes, get down to 6% and 9% on the driveway.
Under
So
10%.
we also extended the cross culvert. That was an issue, worried about, falling off the slopes. We extended that at least, what do we have? 50 foot instead of 20. So we were able to avoid areas about that. And then the other issue was the fire marshal. So we received fire marshal, what, today?
Yeah, last night.
So a little bit of confusion on that, between Brooke and I. It seems like the fire department was fine with the turnaround up here. Code still thinks they want 2, so we're fine with 2, or that works out.
Okay.
Then, the third issue was the zoning board. We went to the zoning board last week, or last month. They had an issue with they were worried about the fire marshal and worried about grading and stuff. And even though this lot has existed in its current state since 1963, they're still, and we have a meeting in May. Hopefully they'll see the light. They want Mr. McCowley to join their properties together and do a bunch of other stuff, which is a little bit of a hardship. So we're hoping not to do that.
Okay.
It's actually in doing zoning meetings most of my career, very find something that's not self-created, and this is actually one that is. The hardship is caused by the town changing their code. But that's really it. So sorry, running in here, so I'm out of breath.
I mean, it's okay. We were gonna bump you down, but then
yeah.
we saw ya.
But yeah, I apologize for being
That's
late.
okay.
So that's it. I think we're in pretty good shape. Health department's ready to go, county DOT, and I think MRB.
Does anyone have any questions or any comments? No? Nothing? You're pretty well set. Teresa, Charlie? I think that we anticipated that you would get some type of an approval tonight. And so Don did pull together a resolution, a draft resolution. Do you mind, Don, just touching base on the resolution as written?
Not at all. So it's a 2-pager. The first page, I'll just go quickly through it. Introduces and identifies the application, says that it's a type 2 action pursuant to seeker. Defers to the code enforcement officer relative to an EPOD 2 permit. So that they can essentially get boots on the ground and check it out as the project is beginning. Issues an EPOD 5 permit for given which is triggered because of Minden Ponds Park.
Right.
And issues that clarifies some matters relating to some questions raised by, I think it was the ECB relative to the EAF. And then conditionally approves the site plan application based on 10 conditions, many of which are standard, including addressing any outstanding engineering comments, any outstanding building inspector or fire marshal comments, addressing kind of duplicative, but addressing the building inspector, fire marshal comments that may be outstanding as it relates to the design and construction of the driveway. Again, another one that's related to that is addressing any outstanding comments, and perhaps there aren't any relating to emergency service providers being able to traverse that driveway. That the building inspector confirm grades of the driveway as they're constructed. Sufficient easements be required, any utility districting be obtained. Any approvals of the water authority be addressed. The EPOD permit will be coming from the code enforcement officer. And that they deal with the issue that was the applicant just raised, which is either getting an area variance or a lot line adjustment to address that right away width.
Any questions?
I had no issues, just one about procedure. We only have a couple easements that are filed, once water authority, they take care of that, the cross access easements to the north. We file that, or do you need to see that before, just with the library page, not the plan?
It's not reported yet, right?
No.
Yeah, I think part of it is you're gonna have to see whether there needs to be a lot line adjustment, because if there is, you're gonna need to revise that easement.
Okay.
And that's gonna go to the town attorney, since the town and the town board deal with access easements, those rights go to the town usually.
So it's to ourselves. So
Okay,
it's referring to, if this project stays as it is, two separate parts,
Yeah.
both counties own both of it. Both
Yeah.
of them, you're gonna give an easement to themselves,
I see.
and I was just gonna file it through their attorney and then put it on the
Yeah.
site plan.
I'd run it by through the town attorney as it is in the condition. Yeah,
Okay.
because they also, I believe, are developing standard form access easements. Is the plan or hope.
Questions about those positions? Nope. Would you like, someone like to make a motion that we approve the salary site plan as presented as per the resolution that was just read? Teresa, second by Earl, everyone in favor? Aye, opposed?
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yeah, aren't you glad you can run it?
Oh my God. I thought that was all right, but appreciate you putting me on first.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Yeah, take care.
And next we have our G&E, Mendon Gate Station. It's update to this project.
But we're gonna get a final set of documents put together for all of our drawings, but definitely want to present where we're at today with our revised site plan, our buildings, and the whole site landscaping. So we redeveloped our overall site plan. There's a little section line out there, like 3 lines down 11 by 17. This time we're gonna keep the existing barn structure. So I've a couple options there. So right now, we're showing the existing building's gonna remain at 3,500 square feet, the existing is 50 by 70. That takes us up to an increase of about 1,100 square feet of building space. And then some of the paving and this modification of the roadway, we have a total of just under 4,000 square feet in net change of the previous cover. Another modification we made is on the fencing, so on the corporate security. Was how do we take down the fence, put the new fence up for that duration? But what we've done is count where our gate is. And then we're gonna offset that gate, we're gonna offset that gate to the inside, 10 feet offset. And then probably 5 foot offset along the throughway. Then back 5 foot offset. I think bring it back again to our communication. That will allow us to build the new gate while maintaining perimeter security. So on our buildings. So right now, let's do look at structurally, the existing foundation, maintenance, that all our criteria for our years set on there with the framework. So what we're showing right now is the existing is basically, it's all Arctic white, which is a little bit different color. The cupolas are actually much larger than originally around the design plan, that we are 5 foot square, they're probably 7 to 8 foot square, so much larger. I believe that's for some of their ventilation. And what we're proposing is, I don't, town is trying to keep all our modifications as a level 1 building alteration. We met with, Cory, code enforcement on site, walk through our intent to basically keep the existing structure. What we do is take the metal panel roofing system off and replace that with the standing seam roof. The white exterior, we take the white exterior out, put the exact same paneling back, but in a Surrey beige color, the same color that complemented at the Valley Station. We might add on the south elevation from the throughway, we might change this vent to a door, so that'd be one minor change to the exterior. Other than that, upgrade the doors from the kind of simple, flat one, so something that has more of an architectural.
Brendan, can I just clarify? So you're gonna keep the structure, but kind of upgrade the architecture of it? Okay,
I'm gonna keep that as a.
Okay.
I think it's called a level 1 alteration, so
What
Okay.
exactly is being increased by 1,100 square feet?
that would be. On the existing, we are removing the odorized, which you can see better on the landscape. The structure that we have on site today, we have National Fuels metering building that remains as is. We have their filtration building that remains as is, and their computer building remains as is. That's on their hacking station. On the RGB side of it, there's a flow control structure that's gonna be removed, that building. We have the existing regulation building, so it's a much smaller footprint, underneath where the second bar is proposed. And then we are also removing the older building, but those two offset to about 1,000 foot increase.
Brendan, are we still under the 4,000 foot for seeker purposes? Do you know?
I believe we are. Because we are just simply not doing it with this structure. Our new building is 2,300 square feet,
How many?
2,300. And then we're replacing 144 square feet for the RT building. So I think we are still getting the same test for that type 2 criteria.
Gotcha. I might change the seeker just to, there were kind of two avenues you could have gone down for seeker type 2. One of them was the 4,000 square foot. The other one was essentially upgrading a facility in kind.
Okay.
So maybe we could just update
Upgrade
it
the
to point to
facility.
that, so we don't have to worry about
Yeah.
building size. Okay.
Is that a depiction of the proposed color? You might want to have a discussion about that.
The reason you're doing that is because you want to match what you're proposing for this.
Correct,
right?
correct.
The different one. Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't want them to see two different.
we're matching what was already proposed.
In section wise, here's 64 comes off our right of ways here. This is our existing condition that, we have our existing fence line. Existing heater building, there's regulation building. There's RQ building, and behind that is their RQ building. So one option was to keep everything the Arctic white color that matches the existing bar. The bar was actually the way it is today, we take the heaters out, the heaters in, leave the building the way it is. The other option is to change the color, so the two buildings would be built with the same material, so that you would have standing seam roofs, probably the charcoal color. And then the siding would be a Surrey beige, and floor trim match probably,
Everything cannot be white.
it could be, that's one of the options. If the board prefers, we can keep everything white, the way it is.
With those upgrades though, correct? Or no?
Um,
Like, so you get the Surrey white is an option. A color option.
yeah, that would,
White would still try to stay the same. We would temporarily remove, go ahead. Lee.
well, if this is gonna be Arctic white, then this would be Arctic white.
Correct,
So,
yes.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
If the board recommends that we modify the colors, we wanna make sure that all three new buildings all have.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
We don't wanna have.
or whatever color.
Yeah, we just
So
wanna-
the color, yeah, it's. Yeah,
But I will say that National Fuels will stay white.
Correct.
We have no control over National Fuel.
okay,
So
so
this-
there's our
There-
white now. and we'll
Everything
stay-
on site is the same color. Right.
last one is the cross section, looks all the way from, fence line, all the way to fence line, so. National Fuels 3 building, those are all in Arctic White, they match the original structures, but these become the two dominant structures on the parcel. They look like they're floating, since the grade's higher, those are needed. Then, in addition to the same modifications, we worked with Doug McCord, landscaping plans. So what their recommendation was to provide an additional planning. I mean, the trees are there, so really good. They are recommending putting some supplemental planting in there, so these trees age out and die, there's another generation back into place of those. Adding some supplemental plantings, that's screening on the 64 side. On the south side, we were originally 2 rows of either bad apple tree, providing some buffer and screening from the northbound traffic. So we're infilling the light green to be the existing trees. The dark green are trees that were originally planted in 93 are still there. And then again, filling in some of that line of sight from the national fuel site. So over here, that's where like more of the flowering crab apples and hawthorns were. So those are all being again replanted to reestablish the original plan that was put back in. That
Did you bring any, the color samples for the fence? Remember we had talked about maybe if it was flat, it might blend into the.
so was not able to get a fabric sample.
Okay,
I did try to drive around, look at some of the schools and see if they had any black fencing. I think there was just one down for fencing.
okay,
In the Hamlin Mendon, I think it's station 157, they had a 6-foot galvanized chain link fence, and it has actually 6 strand of barbed wire around it. So that's right in the Mendon Hamlet. I think there's another one about 64 right in Veterans, that's the first one.
okay. So the barbed wire has to sell.
Correct.
Okay. Is there an option for barbed wire? I mean, do they come in different gauges or whatever?
I think there's a standard.
There's razor wire, which is worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. No, no.
Paxton wire.
Yeah, that razor wire, it's bad.
Is this barbed wire coated with the black vinyl?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
There's a black vinyl chain link, and it blends in with the trees behind it.
Yeah, I think with the landscape plan, I mean, that's gonna be,
Yeah, the dark evergreens and the
Yeah.
black vinyl, I think they'll kind of mesh
the original application.
with all the trees that'll mesh together.
that's a great rendering. I think that's a good.
This has the vinyl, fabric, vinyl framework, and also the chain, the hardware is also. I think that this really soft with that, it's the same color that that Surrey made.
You'd like about black vinyl?
It doesn't.
I think to, in that photo in that station, fence is backed by gravel, when you see a bigger color differential. At this stage, you would see the darker grass and stuff like that. You won't see that grass different. So it's different.
Hi, and, Charlie, you had mentioned you wanted to talk about the color. The
Well,
white or,
I was concerned that you married to that color there and how the board felt about the color. White works for me, but that's of course our decision.
what about you? What do you think? What are your thoughts on the color?
I think you're gonna need to keep the same color as existing if you already have some buildings there, otherwise you're gonna have a new contrast in there and draw more attention.
So the buildings. These two barns will definitely dominate the site. The other structures are gonna be removed. Then our RT building will be here, the small one. The National Fuel building, I believe that one's 20 feet wide, there's 24 feet. So, really from glance out the throughway, their buildings are much smaller, not that pronounced.
Yeah, in any of those photos, can you pick out and kind of show? The barns obviously wouldn't be any color versus the buildings that will remain, so they can get an idea of the detail on them.
Yeah, we tried to get some of those a little larger. This still has the heaters outside, so that was the Surrey beige and the charcoal. Structure, smaller RTU building, then that's their RTU building and their measurement building.
That's,
there.
yeah, proposed,
Yep, so that would be proposed with a
proposed, yeah. That's not-
Surrey beige and the charcoal color. But that would be, again, their buildings are much smaller, white scale.
Those are remaining, or those are existing if they're one. Correct. That's these three structures.
The other matching building is you're calling it the RTU building, right?
That's a.
The art, it's called RTU.
Yeah, it's a communications building,
Gotcha. What's RTU stand for?
remote terminal unit.
Gotcha.
That's how we can remotely monitor, control
Okay,
operation of the
all right, good, thank you.
I think you're gonna see white more than you would see beige, and, maybe want these buildings to fade background a little bit, so I think the beige is probably fine, even though it doesn't match, the other two buildings. They're not very close to each other, and they are much smaller. I think the two larger barns are gonna be more common, and they have them be white.
So 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of. In the community here, right, and we proposed something a little bit more agricultural, which I thought they agreed to. Well. Right. People in-
Wow.
Well,
Okay, okay.
white and red are your traditional barn colors, right? I just feel like the beige is more, gets into a more modern look and gets away from the rural look.
So I did drive around with the site, so just down the road. Across the freeway on the left-hand side, there's a barn there that has a green roof, but kind of a yellowish tan hue to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. And then there's a second one that kind of has that asphalt shingle, charcoal colored roof. Again, kind of that yellowish, Surrey beige color to it.
If you have a sample, it would help you. I know that's tough to get the sample sometimes, but, those are more ivory, more cream color, I think, than the beige, but. I don't think it's a huge deal. I do think the beige is gonna fade the background more than white would. Cream color would be better, or like gray. Probably still be better than the beige, but if you can't get that,
What do they think? It's that gray color with the charcoal roof.
got French gray or something like that, might work. If you have color samples or something like that, that we could compare that.
Yeah, it's a standard beige, it's a Krynar 500 finish, so we want to make sure
Yes,
we stay
so
with.
you wanna stay with the standard colors. That's the thing. That's why if you can't find it, you're better off with a color that's gonna fade to the background, kind of like what you've chosen than something. That's what I think it's.
Alright. You have an opinion, Mr. Earl?
The only opinion I had was the contrast between the building. I personally prefer the beige.
Right.
I know you guys
Either
didn't
way.
speak to national fuels plans necessarily, I think. Any idea if those buildings are slotted for any sort of upgrades or changes in any sort of future?
The total height of the fence with the barbed wire is 9 feet. Is that right? 9, okay.
Just ask a question about, landscaping. Is there any reason why we don't have any? You can see it on this corner.
Yes.
Yes.
So. National Fuel, this is their mini pipeline. And their restriction is, 25 feet, we can't
That's
install, but even inside the fence line, there's one tree here that is inside of that was originally planted. And I've already pointed out to our landscaper that these 3 trees will likely have to adjust and pull outside of that area. Well, even there, again, just to show generically where we want to place the trees, my opinion is once we get structures up, with stakes in the ground, work with the neighbors, make certain that line of sight where we plant the trees, are occupied. Yeah, is that one area we couldn't plant in? Right.
That's just a question. I knew there was something.
The heights on the plant schedule, or that's the heights they're gonna be planted at?
Yes. Oh, but-
So last week, we were here, we left our public hearing open. And I'd like to not reopen it, but at this time, would anybody from the public like to speak?
Good evening, Chris Madison, 864 Pittsburgh London Road. I'm the one most impacted, and I feel like I keep saying that phrase with the development. I like the color, and I'll tell you why.
Which colors?
The colors that were presented, not white. If you go down Mendon Green Road, you see a more serious and sea of white. Majority, It is unimaginative. And there's no forethought to it. Everything is white. Sterile. Colors that have been presented are comfortable. We have barns in this area that are different colors. It doesn't have to be white or green or red. And besides, more importantly of all, the color coordinates very nicely with the color of my house.
Well, if you're impacted,
And that's important. No, I feel strong. I look out my back property. I see a sea of white. George. It is not attractive. I look at this and the thought that's gone into it, and listening to the neighbors that were here the last time. These folks took into consideration the folks that were most impacted by the renovation. That's important. You guys, I know you have a job to do. You are on the planning board, all right? But coming from a similar background, land use planning and zoning, diversity is okay. You don't have to have cookie cutter colors or structures. You can be innovative. And it is going to be, in my opinion, an attractive addition to Route 64. If also will have buffering that I think would work very well. And these folks again have proven themselves to be good neighbors. They have a place. So again, as with my most impacted, I would love to see the barns of a color other than silver and white. I think it would be very attractive. And I thank the board for listening to me. And I approve of what these guys have presented. They work very hard. I thank the board.
well, and thank you for coming back.
Oh,
Anyone else from the public would like to be heard? If not, then I think we'll close the public hearing at this time. I guess that the only thing that's left for us to decide as a board is the color. And so,
I'm not married to white. I was just
I
speaking
know.
in more of a traditional sense.
you know what, and to be honest with you, Charlie, at first I was like, well, why can't it just be white like it always is, and then it'll just blend, it'll just be what it was. But now that I heard Teresa and I saw the colors and now I understand the beige is maybe not such a bad option. Yeah, and so Teresa, you thought the beige was a good option.
It's fine, it's not what I would have chosen, but it's not outlandish or scary or horrible, it's fine. I don't think it's. Does look a little bit, to me, it looks a little bit like a more warehousey, but, but
Do we have an option on we?
Brain proof and trim.
yes, thank goodness it's,
That's what we do. We typically do that.
I mean, it's fine, it looks fine, it's
75 buildings, you know. Dirty beige, right? Green.
Is that more screener?
it's fine, the face to the background, which I think is good.
If we have to apply for a building permit at that time, do you want us to submit color samples for options that are, as long as it's the standard crying art finish color? These seem to be the ones that complemented it. We've used it before.
Right. I don't know that we need to see addition. I mean, cause we could just keep going round and round and round with that. Like, you know what I mean? It's hard to get 4 or 5 people to agree on
And imagine.
anything. And then if we want, it just, yeah, and you guys, yeah, we just need to. Yeah, we just need to make a decision.
So are you then proposing that it be the color depicted on these drawings?
I think if that's what the board is saying, yeah, that's the color that's depicted on the drawing.
Is there a name for that color or?
It's a certain beige and charcoal.
Do the
Okay.
drawings have that specifically noted on them?
Well, the original application had the regulator building in those colors.
Gotcha.
Right, Brendan?
I'm trying to think which one we had.
So I'll upgrade revise the resolution to just point to these drawings.
Okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that, we don't have to debate it any further, it's just there.
The original color was, bright white, regal white. And then the second choice was charcoal, that mimicked Charlie Gate Station and Surrey beige. So it was the second colors, the one was the state stark white, and the second was the other colors.
Yeah,
Are we ready to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
Original app.
in the original application.
do you want me to write those colors in there or just point to the drawings? Okay. And then on the fence, are we doing the fabric, is it a fabric coating, is that what you're saying?
The black fabric, and you recommend that as far as, blending in and.
Yes. One more
Okay.
thing, how do we feel about gray? Just want to put this. We used to call this band tape, this color, and I can't get that out of my head.
That's gonna be so.
How does everyone feel about gray? Is that an option? And then I'll leave it alone.
Great for
Across the board.
the building.
It's hard to say because you want to choose from your standard finishes. If
Raise a spectrum, where you, depending on the
Yeah.
grades
And
available.
then you have to be careful because the gray, I would prefer gray too, with the preferencing, but then you gotta be careful because if your gray of your roof doesn't match. It's a cool versus a warm gray, then it might look strange, so you really would have to see samples at that point.
Yeah.
These are two colors that, like I said, they work together and they're fine, they're not, in my opinion, they're fine.
Gray would work better with the fence.
Gray in general would be better, gray with white trim, then that would, but, you know what I'm saying, it's, at that point, it becomes subjective a little bit. It's not, like I said, it's not, you're not proposing a blue roof or something absolutely awful, so I think at some point, what's why, it's just,
In Nazareth College, they picked plumbing for their stadium roof. Plumbing.
yeah.
Ever been to Nazareth College, that
Yeah.
roof is just like.
Yep.
Sorry, that's.
Right, is the, so just so I can put in the resolution, the fence is gonna include what, what do we put, calling it?
Black vinyl. It'll be fabric, framework, and barbed wire, all of them have a black vinyl coating.
Is that how it is in the plans? The plans call out the black vinyl coating on it?
Okay. That the fence include that the perimeter fence include a black vinyl coating as depicted in the plans? Is that? Okay.
Was there anything else standing? That you wanted? Other than engineering review. I mean, I know you've got all your comments and
Yeah,
pretty much been addressed.
One question, you don't want signature black? We don't have any other county agencies. I think we're chairperson of the county there.
so we don't need town highway.
Well, it's off Canfield Road, so it's Canfield Road County,
It's a county road.
or is that town,
All of our work.
without looking at our,
There's the concrete apron that extends about 12 feet beyond the right of way to the south. So where we're doing our paving operation begins on the private public back, so
we
we
don't
don't
need.
want to touch that. We're just trying to avoid any of the county permits. I think we did a follow-up, just check monuments and we have no impacts on monuments.
Anybody else have anything? Nothing? Nobody? We did have a resolution that we thought, do you mind just kind of touching base on that?
Yep.
Before we put this to
Sure thing. Yeah, so there's a proposed draft resolution.
I did close the public hearing, didn't I?
I don't know, but if you did.
Did I?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Look at
did.
that, he's on top of it.
I usually
Well
don't,
done.
usually. just-
Well done. Let me run through this real quick. So it's a resolution. I'm gonna summarize some of it, but I'll dig into some of the more pertinent areas. It's a resolution to address and as it stands to approve the special use permit and site plans proposed by RG&E. Sort of recites the application materials and what's being proposed. Talks about how it's a public utility under the code and they're looking for site plan and special use permit approval. Talks about the fact that it's been in existence for 30+ years. And that in some, they're looking to replace the public utility scale heaters, remove several buildings, still, right? You're moving a few buildings, right?
Yes, correct.
Upgrade the fence and replace and upgrade separate buildings in some. It recites the fact that, initially we were talking about removing the barn, but after feedback, they're looking to keep the barn, but with one change. So I'm gonna note some changes based on our discussion to the resolution. So when someone moves this, move the written resolution as revised. So the one revision there is gonna cite that the upgrades, that they're retaining the barn, but with upgrades to the exterior, as we discussed tonight. Concludes it's a type 2 action. That's another revision. We're just citing to the rehab and I don't have it offhand, but I looked it up before I did it. We're citing to the alternative provision of seeker for type 2 actions that essentially deals with rehabilitation and replacement of a facility in kind. Then you get into the resolves. One is a waiver relative to any potential dimensional conflicts relating to things such as setbacks between the two property lines, because it is two properties. Another resolve deals with a different waiver for parking, given again, the pre-existing situation and the fact that it doesn't appear any additional parking spaces are needed. Let's see. Then there's a finding that essentially the current proposal is consistent with the existing situation, except improvements to drainage and upgrade to the fence. For security purposes to a height of 9 feet inclusive of barbed wire, but with additional landscaping and a black coating for visual purposes. That's a revision.
Yeah.
Issuance of the EPOD 9 permit, essentially given the pre-existing status as well. Then there's a bunch of findings of fact relative to the special use permit. In large part pointing again to the fact that there's not really a lot of changes, and this has been in place for a long time. At screening, I did update this to also point that additional landscaping is being provided. And at compatibility, at subsection H, I upgraded that or revised that. I keep saying upgrade because you guys are upgrading the barn. It's in my head. I revised it to say that to recite the fact that there's an existing fence that's being upgraded, but there'll be improved landscaping and coating for the fence. And then another revision regarding the special use permit requirements for 260-32 for essential services, again, pointing to the upgrade of the fence to 9 feet, inclusive barbed wire for security purposes, and to ensure adequate fencing is provided. And then the resolution would approve the special use permit application, as well as the site plan application, subject to 7 conditions, one of which is somewhat unique. It's that because there's 2 properties here, that you provide consent from National Fuel, because this is going to apply across both properties. So you want to just provide some sort of written consent so the town has it on file. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not a big deal.
Pretty have emails, you need something on there about that.
That would be ideal, yeah. Yeah. 2, that the perimeter fence include that black vinyl coating as depicted in the plans. That's an addition. As talked about tonight. 3 is another addition. I'll just recite it in full. We had a placeholder about the barn. Now it's revised to read as follows: that the barn housing the public utility scale heaters be retained, but with upgrades to the exterior consistent with the renderings entitled existing heater barn, RG&E stations cross section, and overall station cross sections presented at the April 16th, 2025 planning board meeting, and last dated I have March 20th, 2025. With the color of the barn and RTU building to be as depicted on said drawings. 4, that landscaping be provided consistent with the landscaping plan provided, entitled landscape plan, and last dated April 16th. That's an addition, placement of a placeholder. And then the last 3 are as stated, any conditions, basically addressing the conditions, any outstanding conditions of the engineer, any outstanding conditions of the building inspector, fire marshal, and that any easements required, just like the last application, if there's any necessary easements or access issues, they be addressed. The only other thing is, do we want to we waive dimensional requirements. Do we not want to waive the access issue that Corey raised?
Refresh my memory.
That was what Earl had brought up, the 20 foot width.
Oh,
That's a fire code issue, right? I think.
I believe he wrote that in here as fire code. Let's see.
Minimum, we're actually providing 24 foot.
Okay. Let me just make sure.
Corey wrote in his comments, dated March 25th, the existing loop road will meet the fire apparatus access road requirements, provided that a 20-foot wide ingress egress driveway is maintained to the rear parking area, allowing for two-way traffic flow.
Yes. So I think that this is the end road, 20 foot the entire way, so this is 24 foot all the way to the back.
Okay.
And then this is set up to be 16 foot. They're intended to be just one-way directional roads around their station, but this is.
How did he sign that as building? Fire marshal.
I was pleased that.
In majority of his comments, he bases it off zoning, site plan, and then he'll do utilities and fencing, parking, and then this was underneath fire protection / code compliance.
But how does he sign it? Like, what's his title under there? On that letter?
Building inspector, fire marshal.
Okay, just to clarify that, I'll just put, I'm gonna revise the proposed resolution in the waiver section for the dimensional requirements, just to add that you're not waiving basically the, you're not waiving that comment that he put in his letter.
no,
Yeah,
No.
okay. All right. So if that sounds agreeable,
I got one question. All right, that's clarification. Since the landscaping plan is part of it, does that inherently mean that if the trees die out, it's part of their special use permit that they need to replace or maintain the landscaping as presented?
I can add that as a, I can, if you want, put that in there.
Right now, have been some that have died off over time.
I can add that as an ongoing condition. The landscaping be maintained in accordance with such. Plan. Sometimes those ongoing conditions can be challenging to enforce.
yes.
But if the town's up for it, we'll put that in there and it's there. Okay, so I put that in there as well.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody? Oh, Charlie, what?
I'm just thinking about what leverage do we have with this tree thing. I mean, it's different than a new home. But there's nothing holding their feet to the fire, all the trees die.
Earl.
Not good about the tree signs.
No, he's talking about if they, all the trees die off, what recourse does the town have?
I mean, I don't believe that was a condition of the original plan.
No, I
It's
don't
been 30
think it was
years.
either, and
I
mean, it's still, it's there, a lot of it is, I was just by there today.
In some situations, towns might require maintenance bonds and things like that. We have talked about that with,
In the past.
I don't know if we've ever implemented one. I don't remember. It's something you could consider. It is, presuming you can enforce that condition effectively, it is a condition of their special use permit. You could try to enforce it via that route. Obviously, they obtain this special use permit because they need it. So that might be another road you could go down.
It's worth, I think this reading is still important, but it's less important now that it's in the building.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
So you're comfortable with it as is then?
I personally, I'm comfortable with it as is.
I'll tell you that. Like Wayside, right, when we did the child life, they have a 2-year guarantee, and usually if things are established after 2 years. Obviously there's no guarantee, right, anything can happen.
Right.
But I know that our contracts typically have 2-year guarantees on all our plans. They make it through 2 years, they're in pretty good shape. I mean, I think the firms, right?
And
I would try that pretty good.
Bradley, and Doug Ford, they're saying like a lot of those flowering trees, they have like a 30 to 40-year life expectancy, so.
Once they establish their,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, right,
Yeah.
but then after 30, 40 years, those trees typically will die out, so that's why a lot of those trees along the. Western side
Mhm.
are dying out, those are the more,
right,
Those metal Austrian pines, which they already planted.
that's the north ones, yeah, they said they wouldn't recommend for the Austrian pines.
Yeah, they
I guess
don't sell.
there's a blight, yeah,
Yeah.
they're amazed that those are that healthy, that's why they're recommending. It's been from
Years ago, that's all they planted.
You have an outside landscaping firm with the trees in.
Yeah,
Give you the 2-year
that's
guarantee.
usually on the contractor's responsibility, but it'll be a local, it'll be
But along
local.
with that, you wouldn't have them do the maintenance over that time frame.
They typically do not do maintenance, they have a 2-year guarantee, so they'll come in and water for 2 years, fertilize them, because the last thing they wanna do is.
The ones
replace
I've
them.
seen, they
Yeah.
throw the maintenance back on you.
Yeah, we don't do, yeah. RG&E is not a landscape maintenance company.
So you could throw the maintenance on them. Bring it back.
Yeah,
You're currently under contract with a larger landscaping firm, maintains all these sites, correct? They have to have keys to get in there to mow it.
Well, they do the mowing and trimming.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about maintaining trees.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother department expense.
Yeah. We're a big company, a lot of it there.
That's fine. Off topic, I'm just curious if there's any grounded lightning protection on the tallest structure.
Your barn has, like, protection on it. There's ground plugs that all barns all the way around.
Yeah.
The heaters have large. Yeah. There's a continuous ground system that runs through all the buildings. Like, it's important.
all right. Would someone like to make a motion that we approve, the, Mendon Gate Station as, with the revised, resolution that Don just, outlined, in the Surrey, what was it? Beige. I got the Surrey card, the Surrey beige color. Would someone like to make a motion? Earl? Someone like to second? Charlie? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, then I guess you guys are good to go.
Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
And thank you very much for, again,
Thank
our evaluation of our town and really making it much easier.
Yeah, I'd recommend that. This with the gray roof.
Me and Brendan been doing this a long time. We knew walking in,
Yeah, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
no, we're.
Okay, now moving ahead on our agenda, we have,
Welcome. I'll be in touch with you guys, sending over approval letters and resolutions,
general
conditions
discussion.
attached.
Is there
Great.
anything in
Absolutely.
general that we would like to discuss? Looks like our May 7th meeting now is on the cancel because we don't have anything. For the next meeting after that will be the 21st.
That one would be canceled as well because we don't have any applications that meet that
Nothing
5-week
coming.
deadline.
Okay.
We have,
When?
May 21st.
I won't be
It'll-
part of the May 7th, but there's one meeting anyway. Right?
we don't have any applications that would meet that 5-week minimum that the planning board requires for review. So right now we're looking at, we have one, we have the Calborns who came in for a subdivision application, but,
Isn't it an administrative?
no, because they're creating 2 lots.
Oh,
So they're subdividing their house with 7 acres and then they're keeping the larger parent parcel.
okay.
But Corey and I sent it back for some revisions on the subdivision plat because it was a little confusing and there was some missing parts, so.
Okay.
it's not a deemed a complete application yet, so as soon as it is, I'll send it out to you guys and get it on a schedule, but we're looking at the June, first week of June.
First week of June.
Or the first meeting in June, I should say, second week.
Okay.
What's the date of June, do you know?
I think it's June 4th.
June 4th. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else? I think like version stuff while we're here, before we adjourn. Somebody like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Teresa. Second by Earl. All in favor?